What's going on there, YouTube? Welcome back to another comic book video. Okay, so we are going to continue our coverage over Knightquest, but now we have reached a point where it's time for John Paul Valley to meet, well, Catwoman. Now, as we all know, around this time in DC Comics, Bruce Wayne was no longer Batman thanks to Nightfall, thanks to Bane breaking the back of the Bat. And so because of that, it led to John Paul becoming the next Batman. Now, John Paul has become more violent than Bruce Wayne was when he was Batman. And really, when it comes to the different criminals in Gotham, they're kind of scared to do anything at all because of how aggressive John Paul has become. But now it's time for him to meet Catwoman. And how will their first meeting actually go between one another? And so to get into today's story, we have to jump over to Batman issue number 503. Now, the opening pages of this book, we actually see John Paul Valley watching Catwoman leave a warehouse. Now, for John Paul, let's not forget that he has only been Batman for like maybe a few months, and that is really it. So he's still kind of learning about the different characters in Gotham City. But he has heard about her, but he does not know everything about her just yet. But just kind of like Bruce Wayne, for John Paul, something about the way Selina Kyle moves, the way she walks, the way she leaves the warehouse, he is instantly falling in love with her. He begins to think about different things he wants to do well with her. Now, for John Paul, he does not chase her down. Matter of fact, he just leaves to go back to the Batcave to continue to think more about Catwoman. But while you have, John Paul Valley in the Batcave still thinking about Catwoman, well, he realized the bat signal has gone off, which means that Jim Gordon is summoning John Paul over to the GCPD building. Now, let's not forget, for Jim Gordon, he has no idea that, there's a new Batman in town. He still believes it's Bruce Wayne in the bat suit. He kind of knows there's something different about Batman, but honestly, he can't put his finger on it just yet. Now, the reason why Jim had called John Paul over to the GCPD building is because, well, he got word that a neurotoxin has been stolen from a nearby warehouse, the same warehouse that Selina Kyle had run away from earlier in this chapter. Now, for Batman, he's kind of wondering, why in the world was Selina Kyle steal a huge amount of neurotoxin that is also called Zyklon C? And I really hope I pronounced that word correctly. Now, here's the reason why Jim is so concerned about the idea the neurotoxin has been stolen. Because in Gotham, there's going to be a huge summit. A bunch of people coming together to discuss different things around the world. And with that being said, you have people kind of fear that there might be a big, huge terrorist attack at that summit and possibly be using the Zyklon C. Now, for Jim, it does not make sense that Selina Kyle would steal something to kill somebody because she's not a killer. She's a thief, but not a killer. But for John Paul, he's still learning more about Selina Kyle. And so for him, he's kind of like, no, I'm sorry, Jim, but I saw her leave the warehouse and most likely she's the one who has stolen it, which means she's planning to do a terrorist attack, which means I have to stop her. It's John Paul not listening to Jim Gordon. Now, after their meeting, you do have Harvey Bullock come over to Jim Gordon and say, hey man, the mayor wants to talk to you. And this is kind of reminding us that right now, the mayor is trying his best to, well, for me, get reelected. Because right now, half the people in Gotham, they truly do believe in Batman. But the other half, they don't like the idea of having a vigilante in Gotham who's doing the cops' work. But at the same time, for the mayor, he realized that Batman is more effective when it comes to taking down criminals across Gotham City. And so you have the mayor asking Jim like, hey, listen, we got word in the possibility there could be another terrorist attack in Gotham, but this time at the summit. Please tell me you got Batman on the case. And you do have Jim tell the mayor like, yeah, man, I got him on the case and hopefully he'll be able to save the day. Now, once you have John Paul being able to go back to the Batcave, you have John Paul begin to think more about Bruce Wayne. Here's the reason why. Because he's wondering, why didn't Bruce Wayne stop Selina in the past like he did when it comes to other criminals in Gotham City? Now, for John Paul, he also realized that for Selina Kyle to use the neurotoxin, she needs another chemical to actually make it active. And so once she's able to actually find that other chemical, well, then the neurotoxin can be used at the summit. And so for John Paul, his goal is to figure out where is that other chemical and be there just in time to hopefully stop Selina. Now, the next section really shows that John Paul could possibly be a great Batman, even though he is somewhat aggressive. And here's the reason why I'm saying that, because you have John Paul being able to figure out which warehouse is holding the second chemical, but he's also able to figure out that there are 3 different access points that Selina Kyle can take to enter the actual warehouse. But he also knows that he can't be there all 3 spots to watch them to make sure to get the jump on Selina. And so he had set up some devices, kind of like sensors, to kind of tell him like, hey, she came in this part right here, so you should go that way if you want to cut her off or get the jump on her. And so while you have John Paul inside the Batmobile, one of the sensors do go off and say, hey, she's coming in through this access point. And for John Paul, it's perfect, because now he is able to get the jump on her. And now it leads into their first actual meeting. Now, their first meeting does not go in the way you think it would, because you have John Paul still being so aggressive. Now, with them being aggressive, it kind of tells Selina Kyle that this is not the same Batman that she has known for many years. Matter of fact, she can tell this is a different Batman, because automatically you have John Paul say, hey, listen, I know that you are trying to pull off some kind of terrorist attack. Now for Selina, she's like, wait a second, I know Batman. He would not just jump to conclusions without actually trying to talk to me first. But here's John Paul just going ahead and jumping to conclusions, believing that she is trying to pull off some kind of terrorist attack. But she tells us, the readers in Batman, that yes, she did steal the Zyklon C, but the main goal was to keep it away from terrorists. But also, she's now trying to find a different chemical that could kind of replace the other one that could make Zyklon C go active. Now, before she is able to kind of explain more about her plans, you have John Paul just go ahead and begin to get the jump on her, trying to fight against her. But this battle really tells Selina that this is not her Batman. This is not Bruce Wayne. But after a few pages of these two characters fighting against each other, you do have Selina being able to actually get away. But of course, John Paul is not done with her just yet. Now, as we jump into Batman issue number 504, we do kind of pick up where the last chapter left off at, but something else also happens. Let me explain. So, for John Paul Valley, before he became Batman, he was known as Azrael, and he was part of a group called the Order of Saint Dumas, where you had the actual order kind of follow the guidelines of one of the saints better known as Saint Dumas. Now, when it came to John Paul, his father was I don't want to say the original Azrael, but he was the one before John Paul was. Now, when it came to his father, he wanted to make sure that his son would be ready to take over the actual role. And so he built the system. Now, the system was implanted into the mind of John Paul to kind of make sure that John Paul would be ready to take up the mantle of Azrael when the time had come. And so for John Paul, when his dad died, which meant that John Paul had to take up the mantle, John Paul knew how to fight. John Paul knew most of the secrets about the Order of Saint Dumas. Not all, but most of it. Now, Azrael is a role in the Order of Saint Dumas, and it's better known as their avenging angel, meaning that if somebody tries to cross the line with the Order, they sent out their avenging angel, and that would be, well, Azrael. Now, for John Paul, recently, thanks to the system, he has begun to see the actual Saint Dumas. Now, with them seeing the actual Saint Dumas in his mind, you do have Saint Dumas trying his best to talk to John Paul, trying to give him an actual life mission. Now, the life mission does change back and forth, where sometimes it's him saying like, hey, you know what? I don't like the idea of you becoming the Batman and trying to take up a new mantle. But then sometimes you have the actual Saint Dumas pantheon coming to John Paul saying, no, you have taken up a great role becoming the Batman to help protect the city from darkness. And so currently we're seeing him kind of talking to Saint Dumas, and once again the actual mission changes again. Now, it's a very short period of time because the only reason why he does appear is because it's John Paul still kind of thinking about his mission, but also kind of wondering more about Catwoman and kind of hoping that Saint Dumas can kind of guide him on what to do when it comes to Selina Kyle. But either way, as we jump into this chapter, he does continue to try to chase her down over to a boat. Now, this leads into another battle between these two characters where you actually have Batman trying to bring her in, but at the same time, Selina Kyle sees him and she puts the boat in drive, and the boat is just heading towards another part of the actual pier. Now, here's the problem though. You see, it's Batman once again not trying to listen to Selina Kyle. She's trying to explain to him that she's not actually trying to, steal the toxin and use the toxin. She's trying to be a good person, and she's trying to explain what her actual plan is. But the problem is, Batman is not listening. And so for Selina, she knows she has to go ahead and get the heck out of here. And so she grabbed the container that's currently holding the chemical she tried to steal earlier, and she jumps off the boat. Now, Batman was able to jump off the boat as well, but for him, it was at the very last minute. And the boat does crash into another part of the pier, which does cause a small explosion, which does catch the eyes of innocent people who were nearby, and of course they call in the GCPD. Now, for Batman, he does continue to try to chase after Selina Kyle, and really, the chase goes all over Gotham City, over to a tower called Tuscany Tower. Now, when they do arrive inside the tower and their battle continues, a gargoyle does fall out of the window and crashes right on top of Renee Montoya's car. And as you know, she does work for the GCPD right under Jim Gordon. And so once that happens, she's all like, hey, Jim, hey, Harvey, I think Batman and Catwoman are currently fighting inside that building. And so as the battle continues on, you have the police trying to get up to the top of the tower. Now for Batman, he kind of does realize that this battle might go to the actual death because neither side is trying to give up so easily. Each person is going for the final strike. Now, as their battle goes on, you then have, the GCPD being able to barge into the room. Now, for Batman, this is perfect because Selina Kyle was still holding on to the container that was holding that chemical, and that container is right near her right now. And so it's John Paul saying, hey, listen, Jim, you wanted proof that Selina Kyle is trying to be a terrorist and use a chemical to kill off innocent people at the next summit. Well, look right over there. There's a container and she was the one holding it. And you have Batman just dip out, leaving Selina to deal with this issue on her own. But now we have to jump over to Catwoman issue number 7, the final chapter for this 3-part story arc, where we actually begin to learn what exactly is going down. Now, the opening pages of this chapter does pick up where the last chapter left off at, but you do have Selena Kyle kind of explain to us about how she was kind of brought into this whole situation. You see, she had met a group of people called the Friends of the Earth Nature Magic Alliance. Yeah, that's their name. It's a very lovely, lovely name. Either way, their big goal is to, protect the environment. But they got word that the next summit, the committee there were actually thinking about using the Zyklon Sea on innocent people and animals in a nearby rainforest to go ahead and remove those people and animals to begin to do some work in the rainforest. And so once they got word, they knew that someone else might try to use the chemicals on the actual committee. Now, when it comes to Catwoman, she also met a guy known as Joe Underhill. Now, Joe Underhill was the person who had actually created the formula. And so it's her telling us like, okay, this is how she got involved, and this is why she's trying her best to make sure that chemical does not fall in the wrong hands. Now, we're going to learn who is trying to use the chemicals here in a moment, but for right now we know how she got involved. But you do have Selena being able to kind of get away from the police while using her friend's tricks to kind of help her out there at the tail end of that scene. But now we have to jump over to two characters, and that would be Marv and Doogie. Now, these two characters are the two guys who are trying to use Zyklon Sea at the actual summit to kill off all the people there. But here comes the big problem. You see, they are currently holding on to the chemical that activates Zyklon Sea, turning it into an actual neurotoxin. The problem is, well, now the GCPD is currently holding on to Zyklon Sea. And so what they're currently holding on to is, basically useless. But then you have one of the guys say, hey, I got an idea. Let's kidnap Dr. Underhill, the friend to Selena Kyle, because if we do that, we can have him recreate more of Zyklon Sea. And once he does that, we can then use our chemical to actually turn it into a neurotoxin to begin the process of killing off the people at the summit. And really, by the next page, we actually see the two guys being able to find Dr. Underhill and knock out the person that was with him, grab Dr. Underhill, and take him away to have him begin to work on the actual chemical so that they can use it on the people at the summit. Now, you do have Selena head over to the GCPD building. Why? To use the bat signal as a way to call up Batman and tell him, hey man, listen, so earlier you believed that I was trying to use the chemical as a way to attack the people at the summit, but you are completely wrong. And so you didn't have Selena go out of her way to kind of explain things to him to what she was trying to do. And so after a few pages where you do have Selena being able to actually convince Batman that one, she's not trying to be a terrorist, but two, she's also trying to be a good guy, she also asked him to actually help out. Like, hey, I need your help to stop this. Can you help me? And you have Batman say yes. So now the two characters are going to work together. Now, this is where you kind of have the book begin to wrap up very quickly. So getting back over to Marv and Doogie, you do have one of the two guys being able to take the new batch of chemicals with them over to the conference, while the other guy stays behind to kill off Dr. Underhill. Now, luckily for the Doctor, he is saved at the very last second from Batman and Catwoman. Now, with those two characters being there, they also kind of realize that maybe they're a tad bit too late when it came to stopping the two guys. So now they have to run over to the actual conference. Now, the book really does end on a good note because we do kind of find out that Dr. Underhill did not actually give the boys the actual toxin. Instead, what he created for them was just tear gas, and that's really it. So for the boys, they believe like, okay, yeah, we got the toxin. Go ahead and head over to the summit right now and release it. But in reality, They don't have anything at all. And so the book really ends with Batman and also Catwoman being able to get there in time to stop the last guy from actually using the gas, even though all he has is just tear gas. But once you have our heroes being able to stop him, you have our heroes go their separate ways. And yeah, that does kind of end today's comic book video. The whole idea of John Paul meeting Catwoman for the first time in DC Comics. But yeah, guys, see y'all next time in the next video. But guys, leave me a like down below and subscribe. But later.